seen my share, broken halo, folded wings that used to fly. They've all gone, wherever they go, broken halos that used to shine.
Hey everybody, Master Craftsman Sam back here today with another video. We got door casing number 1. This will be the first installment of probably a 4-part series, I guess. Maybe 3. We'll see how many videos we need to do for it. Got quite a lot of footage for this. The first step we'll be doing today is marking all your casing. Also, you'll have to finish up any drywall that is still sitting proud of the jam. Sometimes it's hard to tell while you're hanging the door if the drywall will get in the way of the casing or not. So we need to go around and dry fit everything. Dry fit means to put it in place, see how it fits against the wall or in that spot, because we're dealing with an imperfect world when we're dealing with framing and drywall work. It's never going to be perfect. So we need to know where it's imperfect, and we need to make our work, make their work look perfect. That's what a trimmer does. So I really love doing casing. It's probably my favorite part because you really get to showcase your work. I do a specific style, and when you're really on the money, it takes about 8 minutes to nail it up for one door, and then it will take another 2 minutes per piece for dry fit, marking, and cutting. So all in all, you should be looking at 2, 4, 6, about 16 minutes per door for casing when you're really on the money and working hard. So just enjoy this video. Hope it helps, and you can help me out by liking, subscribing, and sharing the video with any carpenters you may know. And also I put click the bell, and I put all my tools listed in the description with Amazon affiliate links. So enjoy browsing through those, and if you can find anything you need, I'd encourage you to buy it through those links. It directly supports me, keeps the channel going. Without further ado, here's casing a door part 1. Okay, today we'll be going and taking care of all the dry fitting of every piece. We'll be marking it all, marking it right where we need it, about a 1/4 inch gap, or a 1/4 inch reveal. 3/16 strong would be perfect. So what we're going to be taking care of is where all the drywall sticks out. We'll know then when we place the casing against there where that happens. I've went through and numbered each door 1 to 4 all the way around, just with a pencil right above the head jamb. If you are doing the whole house, you might consider numbering the upstairs and the downstairs separately, so that there is no confusion where each piece of casing goes, upstairs or downstairs.
if you are going to do that, keep everything separate. Sweep the dust away before you dry fit. The dust, or rather any large debris, can throw off your dry fit marks. 3/16 strong, about. It's all done by eye. You'll get the eye for it. If you really need help figuring out about what a 3/16 strong reveal is, then you might consider using a tape measure or some kind of thickness gauge. We're going to set it against the jamb. Make sure we have no gap. What I'm showing you there is be mindful of where your striker plate will hit. Your striker. If your striker hits that white trim, it'll leave a black mark. We want to leave it at least 3/16 from the jamb, especially right there where the striker goes. I'm going to number these doors. Number 1. There's the number 1. There's the number 1. And there's the number 1. Go ahead and set those aside. Move inside. We're going to dry fit these. There I'm sweeping away any dust on the floor and marking right at 3/16 strong. I'm noticing it may be a little bit tight, maybe tighter than 3/16 at some spots, but it's a bowed wall, and if you can see, we're in a closet under the stairs. No one will ever be in there anyway. Most any home, this is just fine to do. If the reveal underneath a closet is just tight by a 1/16 or so, no one will ever notice. You can see when I place against there, it wants to bow out and leave a gap. So what we'll do is we'll go out and grab our multi-tool, and we're going to remove more drywall than we did the first time while we were hanging the door. You can see I've removed quite a bit of drywall, but this is still an imperfect world, even though we've tried to make it perfect. We're going to have to remove a little bit more. This time, while I cut out the drywall, the entire piece fell out. You can see? That's just fine. We're going to be covering it with the trim. It's not a good practice to do so if you don't need to. Drywall is used as a fire barrier. Just look at your local building codes and stuff. Make sure everything is just fine for your area. Here I'm going to circle this one to signify that this is door 1, but it's on the inside of where I have placed my number. The other side of the door is where I've wrote the number 1. This is just to keep everything organized. Now that we have everything dry fit, we need to notice that is a left, this is a right. And we are going to stack everything up based on whether or not it's a left or a right side of the door. Some people will tell you to measure your door and not do this dry fitting process. That may work, and it'll probably save you a little bit of time. But I'll tell you, sometimes it will not work, and you will run into problems and have giant gaps at the bottom of your doors. It's just not a good idea. I would say everybody should be doing this step, even though they aren't. No matter where you're at, it's always going to fit because you dry fit it. Also, you're finding all the places before you're going to install all the casing. You're finding all the places where the drywall sits proud by dry fitting against it. You see, this will not fit between the hinge and the wall. So we're going to have to go to the table saw and make a rip cut. Hook your tape measure on the inside of that hinge and see where it lines up. That's showing about 1/8. So I'm going to cut off 3/16 strong. So I have extra wiggle room. Also, you don't want casing to be rubbing against the hinge. The hinge is a moving object, so having a stationary object against it, naturally you'll have rubbing. Right now, I'm raising my blade on my table saw to about 3/4. Most casing will not be stronger than 3/4 thick. Now, I'm placing the casing against the blade and getting a gauge rather than using my tape measure. So now I go back to the table and I'm going to adjust it 3/16 strong to take off exactly what we need without measuring anything. Keep your hand on the table saw, right on the top, and never get towards that blade at all. Here I'm going to flip around and pull it through backwards while I have my hand on the table. If you keep your hand on the table while you do this, there's no way your hand can get into the blade. It's just good practice. There, I'm dry fitting it again. I know I've already swept away any debris, so I don't have to do that part again. We're dealing with a bowed wall here, but the painter can caulk about 1/8 inch. So if it's 1/8 inch off the wall, the painter can caulk that. But here's the thing, if you press it like that, it shifts over to the drywall and takes up any slack. So while you're nailing, we'll be pressing it to the drywall tight. There I'm marking my reveal at 3/16 strong. This is door number 2 on the inside. So I do a number 2 and circle it. I'm going to go ahead and give myself another mark at 3/16 strong on the right side case. we're going to need to rip this one because it overhangs into the jamb. It's got an overhang of about a 1/16. So we're seeing about, oh, I said 1/8. So it's overhanging the jamb by 1/8. So what you'll want to do is do 1/8 plus about 3/16 strong. That way you cut out your entire reveal. So we're going to go a little over 3/8. We'll not go all the way to 9/16, but we get pretty close. I mean 7/16. I'm going to flip around, grab the trim hard, and keep my hand on the table right at the end. Hook it underneath if you need. If you don't like using the table saw like I do, then please, I would encourage you to use it by your saw's user manual. I am by no means somebody that will keep you absolutely safe. That is up to you. Your safety is on you. So if you don't like the way I do something, then you should probably never do it that way. I think above all, awareness is key. Techniques, implementing them over and over, and learning the right safe techniques to keep you safe on the job. Here I'm going to mark a number 3 and keep my lefts and rights separate. There won't be any casing on the inside of this door, so we'll skip the inside and move to the 4th door. Here, I looked at the floor first to make sure there was no debris in the way. If there had been, I would get it out of the way. This door is close to a corner bead, and we need to remove some drywall. So I'm going to grasp the wall here. Put it there and keep it there while you're hammering, because the corner bead is attached to drywall. If the drywall moves, then the corner bead may form a fracture with the mud that the finisher attaches to the drywall. We want to avoid that if possible. This piece of casing did not want to sit flush against both the jamb and the drywall. So I'm going to give it a nice bull nose all the way down. Or at least as far as I need it. It's hard to grab the other side when you're above your eye line. I probably could have, but I decided to take the chance there. A fracture in the corner bead isn't the end of the world. Here we're checking to make sure we don't have any gap. And I point out the divot when in the middle of the casing, where the manufacturer has scooped it out. That part will allow your casing to straddle the jamb and the drywall, sometimes without having any gaps. Sometimes you may want to scoop that out a little more, depending on the door. In order to do that, you probably need to watch another video. That one wants to rock. So I'm marking where the drywall needs to be removed. You don't want any imperfections if you can avoid them, especially in a custom home. So we're going to cut this out. Here I'm showing how to get a perfect cut on the drywall. I overlap the casing on the jamb by 1/8 inch so that I can give myself a perfect line to stay inside of. Because if I get on the outside of that, there's going to be a big ugly hole in the drywall that my casing will not cover. When I need to remove a large chunk of drywall, I like to have lines to color inside of, so to speak. There, I realized I didn't need to go any farther down, so I just cut straight over to the jamb and give it a nice pound, and it all just falls right out of there. Use the claw and go up and down on it to remove any excess gyp that might stick out. Sweep all the debris you just created out of the way before you continue dry fitting. There I put my foot against the bottom, as you see. Make sure it's sitting flat. I've already marked the top, or marked the reveal, and I've marked the casing to remember which side it's on, or which door rather, and which side. I'm sorry, I hadn't marked it yet, so I had forgotten that step. And I got number 4 marked right on there. Keep your left and right casing together, and it will be apparent a little later why you need to keep your lefts and your rights separate, and why it is important to mark each door with a number. Here I'm just going to cut about 6 inches off the top because it's too tall to fit within the room for a dry fit. The idea is to get it to where it will sit straight up to the ceiling. Now it stands up just fine, but we need to be mindful that we are placing it on top of that tile. It's always going to be okay to go directly to the floor. Most carpet people just set up to the trim, not underneath it. Most flooring people will cut your jamb with their multi-tool before they install. So it's better to them to have to cut your jam or cut your jambs or casing out with their multi-tool than to have a big gap, because builders do not like big gaps under your trim and jambs. there's a bow in the wall. So we are going to have to deal with it. And how we deal with it, we really can't use the fence on the table saw to deal. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the fence first and get the top hinge cut right. We're going to measure from the drywall over to the hinge. See about where we need. Three and a half, I said. So we're going to really cut it at 3 3/8. Three and a quarter, actually, I said. Just so it didn't cut too much off, I said I would do 3 5/16. So we're going to set our fence at 3 5/16. Alternatively, you could do the part where I hook my tape on the hinge and see how much sticks out. There, I hold that fast to the table while I move across and move my hand away from that blade. I know this is going to have to go back to the saw, but I want to make sure it fits between the first hinge and the drywall, which it does. So now I can go ahead and note where I need to cut to with a mark. I'll start my rip right there, and I rip it at an angle. So I said I need to rip 3/16 off. You could measure this and then mark it with your level. That is not how I do it, because I've been doing this a while. I can do it by line of sight. So I'll start feeding it through and cut at an angle towards my mark. 3/16. I'm going to end right there. Do it all freehand. So there, I'm feeding it through at 3/16. This is all to dry fit each piece to get it right. Be very careful. If you bind your piece up within that table saw blade, bad things can happen. That cut looks a little rough, but it's going against the wall, and then the painter will caulk over that. So we don't have to have the most beautiful cut. Things didn't quite fit, so we're going back to take a little more off. And you may have to do that a few times. I definitely suggest that if you can, keep your table saw close to where you will be doing this process. Sometimes you might have to run out to a garage or something like that. If that can be avoided, definitely try and do that. Some things you can do to make customers okay with you cutting inside would be throwing down a tarp. Also, using dust collection hooked up to your saw, a vacuum, Here I'm pointing out that black mark. It's not going to be visible. The main black marks that you have to worry about are any place that the striker is rubbing against the trim, as I showed earlier. We got 4 on the inside, so we're going to do a number 4 and then circle it. That'll be it for this portion of the video. We'll have another installment coming up very soon. I'd encourage everyone to like, subscribe, share, and click the bell